Just feet away from the border in Nogales, Sonora, dozens of migrants are waiting to seek asylum in the U.S., waiting for a chance to eat. Some have already crossed into the U.S. but have been sent here to Mexico to wait for their court date. We meet two women too afraid to talk to us on camera, too scared that the violence they're fleeing from in Honduras and Guatemala will catch up to them and their children. The group Kino Border Initiative opening its doors to help.
There's just so many people who are in Nogales right now, between MPP, between people who are getting deported from the desert and from living in the U.S. for years.
Katie Sherrar has heard the stories.
Would you like to go back to Guatemala or back to Mexico to wait? And they said, well, neither. And they said, you have to choose one. So they chose Mexico just because it's at least there's a tiny, tiny sliver of opportunity.
Inside the dining room, migrants await a warm meal. Beans, rice, and chicken.
There's not so many shelters. It's cold at night. The kids have illnesses.
Migrants often waiting 2 to 3 months to be seen by an immigration judge more than 7 hours away in El Paso, Texas.
A lot of people are very unfamiliar with Mexico. A lot of people don't even speak Spanish. It's also through pretty dangerous territory in Chihuahua and Sonora. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty on the parts of people who are subject to MPP.
But the women I spoke to tell me they can't go back. It's too dangerous and too expensive, paying more than $5,000 each to get to the U.S., only to realize they couldn't stay.
It feels like one of the most cruel things that the U.S. could possibly do to people who are already traumatized and already fleeing extremely difficult, dangerous, and vulnerable situations.
The situation in the U.S. has been difficult, too. During 2019, we took you to different shelters overwhelmed with migrants. But because they're now being returned to Mexico under MPP, a lot of them are empty.
Pop-up shelters have closed because there just isn't enough activity to justify keeping them open.
It's places like this in Mexico that are now overwhelmed.
The shelters are at capacity between providing for all of these different kind of demographics.
I reached out to Customs and Border Protection to see how this policy is affecting their operations. Neither Border Patrol nor Customs would go on camera about this topic, but Border Patrol did provide this statement. It reads in part, primary goal of MPP to reduce the extraordinary strain on our border security and immigration system by freeing up personnel and resources to better protect U.S. sovereignty and the rule of law. Recent video from the border with Central America and Mexico shows there are even more migrants making their way north. A humanitarian crisis showing no signs of slowing down.
As long as the policy is in effect, we'll do whatever we can to make sure that people are fed and taken care of.
Since the migrant protection protocols were implemented a little more than a year ago, CBP tells me nearly 60,000 migrants have been returned to Mexico. Here in the Tucson sector, we know about 400 people have been sent to Mexico through Nogales, but what we don't know is how many people have been apprehended here and bused to other spots like El Paso. I've requested those numbers and will bring that to you as soon as I get it. I'm Angelica Carrillo for KOLD News 13, live local, late breaking.